So Bitcoin represents a new asset. If it's a high performing asset, right, and it's the best performing asset in 15 years, it's up like 48% in the past 48 months versus the S&P looks like a 12 or 13% performer. It's a performing asset. It's a new asset. And now you have $11 trillion money manager that writes a white paper and says it's unique and is not correlated.
The digital asset space is reshaping financial markets and challenging norms. As regulations shift and institutions adopt digital currencies, Bitcoin's role as a transformative asset grows. In an interview, American entrepreneur and co-founder of MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor highlights its impact amid evolving regulations and economic changes. He sees looser Federal Reserve policies as broadly beneficial, especially for Bitcoin. Saylor underscores Bitcoin's legitimacy and strong performance compared to traditional investments over 15 years, pointing to institutional acknowledgement from major financial players, such as BlackRock. He frames Bitcoin as a unique, uncorrelated asset, offering rare portfolio diversification and hedging opportunities, depending on regulatory clarity that could either solidify its role or undermine it. Similarly, in another interview, Cathie discusses the increasing regulatory complexities that present significant challenges in finance and technology. She calls for reforms in digital asset regulation, mergers, and acquisitions, envisioning more open-minded leadership to stimulate innovation and broaden investor access. She also highlights the influence of figures like Elon Musk in fostering efficiency and forward-thinking governance. To hear more insights from both Michael Saylor and Cathie Wood, stay tuned as we bring you clips from the interview. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
Well, I think that if we're talking about the Fed, we're talking about an interest rate policy, and I think the interest rate policy is going to be a bit looser. And so all assets will be a winner with a less restrictive Fed, and I think the writing is on the wall there. I think with regard to regulatory clarity, the real key point here is the vast majority of the money in the world is sitting in 60-40 bond portfolios or sitting in real estate. So the traditional money, conventional money, is sitting in a 60-40 portfolio or real estate. The scared money, the traditional scared money, is sitting in gold. And so the only thing that Bitcoin needs to win is just to be acknowledged as a legitimate asset class. When money managers like Fidelity or BlackRock point out that this is an institutional grade asset, a digital gold, a digital property, or a digital capital, that's the most important thing that's happened in Wall Street in 40 years. And last week, BlackRock published a white paper where the headline was Bitcoin, a unique diversifier. And they said not only is it a legitimate asset class, by the way, the regulators help with that. When the regulators approve spot ETFs and when they approve options trading, they're signaling to all these traditional old money investors that this is not tulip bulbs. This is not a scam. This is legitimate. So they do their part by showing it's legitimate, but BlackRock does their part by pointing out it's a unique diversifier. So Bitcoin represents a new asset. If it's a high performing asset, right, and it's the best performing asset in 15 years, it's up like 48% in the past 48 months versus the S&P looks like a 12 or 13% performer. It's a performing asset. It's a new asset. And now you have $11 trillion money manager that writes a white paper and says it's unique and is not correlated. So if it's not correlated, that means the 60-40 portfolio can be replaced with a 55, 35, 10 portfolio. And so do the quick math on what happens when 10% of hundreds of trillions of dollars flows into an asset that only has 450 Bitcoin a day available from natural sellers. That's $25 million a day of natural selling. It's not that much. And so when people reallocate their investment portfolio, then that's very bullish for the asset class. And all this regulatory clarity, regulations mean different things to different assets for sure. But Bitcoin is a very simple principle. It's like just digital capital. So I've said before, it's either going to zero or it's going to a million, because if it's tulip bulbs and if it's not legit, if it's a scam, it's just getting regulated out of existence, right? But if it's legitimate, it's basically everybody's holy grail. It's like basically the font of eternal youth for investors. It's the thing everybody wants, a high performing asset not correlated to the rest of their portfolio. You don't even have to have to agree that you understand it. You just have to agree it's legitimate and it's uncorrelated. And at that point, a portfolio manager says, well, just give me some of it.
Michael Saylor asserts that a less restrictive Federal Reserve interest rate policy would benefit all asset classes, with indications of such a shift evident. He highlights Bitcoin's superior long-term performance, suggesting even modest portfolio reallocations toward it could drive significant demand and strengthen diversified investments. However, Cathie Wood has expressed concern over the excessive influx of regulations, particularly impacting the FCC's approach to crypto and digital asset legislation, and the FTC's handling of mergers and acquisitions. She anticipates significant regulatory reforms ahead, referencing former President Trump's policy of eliminating 2 regulations for every new one introduced, potentially with even greater impact. Wood notes Elon Musk's proposal for a government efficiency department and his potential oversight role. She calls for changes in SEC leadership to reduce regulatory burdens and improve market access.
I think the regulations that have been creeping into the system, actually, they started to creep in. They've just flooded the system and really gummed it up. So the biggest regulatory issues have been around the SEC, especially when it comes to digital assets or crypto legislation, and the FTC. As it relates to M&A activity. I think both there are going to be big changes there, and that is going to be the beginning, I think, of a lot of regulatory changes. In his first administration, President Trump basically said, for every regulation you want to introduce, anyone in my administration, you must get rid of 2. I think it's going to be maybe more dramatic than that this time around. And I also think having Elon Musk, who I think today announced that he'd like to name a new department, the Department of Government Efficiency, get that, DOGE, Doge. I think he's going to come into the administration. I don't think he'll be a formal part of the administration. He'll be more in an oversight role. I think first, as it relates to crypto or digital asset regulation, they're going to replace Gary Gensler with someone who is much more open-minded, I would say, and will let the legislative process go to work. And, the SEC is supposed to regulate, enforce laws. They're not supposed to create laws by enforcement, which is what Gary Gensler was doing. So I think that's going to be important. I also think if you look at the public equity markets, I think the number of public companies out there right now has been cut in half in the last 15, 20 years. The regulatory nightmare of being a public company has kept leaders of companies basically saying, if I don't have to go public, I am not going public. And so I think we're going to see a lot more work in that regard to give, the average investor a shot at some of these moonshots. So I think that's going to become very important. As far as the FTC, the antitrust has gone way too far. They were denying mergers and acquisitions that really the companies were tangential to one another. They weren't even really in the same market. So we're seeing, and yet at the same time, we've seen these megatech companies grow into, massive organizations and dominating their market. So they were denying mergers and acquisitions for, think about JetBlue and Spirit Airlines.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous. That was in the same industry, but one is going bankrupt now because they wouldn't allow that M&A. They were just dogmatic about it and didn't show to us at least any common sense.
In the wake of the recent U.S. election, cryptocurrency markets have surged, with analysts predicting a potential $100,000 price target for Bitcoin in the near term. This optimism follows the Federal Reserve's recent rate cut, which bolstered investor interest in risk assets like Bitcoin. Major cryptocurrencies saw notable gains, with Cardano leading the pack, surging 16% in 24 hours amid renewed interest in decentralized finance. Bitcoin's own price rose to record highs, sparking speculation of continued growth driven by increased liquidity and favorable policy expectations under the new administration. The rate cut has increased market inflows, with US-based Bitcoin ETFs recording over $1.3 billion in net investments, surpassing previous records. Analysts like Min Jung from Presto Research suggest a price target of $100,000 as the next psychological level, while some even speculate on the possibility of Bitcoin becoming part of a U.S. strategic reserve. Alex Kupcikovich from FX Pro echoed this sentiment, expecting a continued upward trend with potential peaks, reaching $110,000 within the next few months. However, some traders warn of potential short-term pullbacks due to post-election adjustments and policy uncertainties, especially with economic factors like tariffs and rising debt. Despite these cautions, Bitcoin remains favored to outperform other assets, as investors view it as a lower-risk option compared to traditional equities. As market dynamics evolve, traders continue to closely watch Bitcoin's trajectory, anticipating its role in the future of digital finance. As we come to a close, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin and digital assets reshaping finance amid changing regulations and institutional recognition? Can Bitcoin's potential as a high-performing asset transform investment strategies and drive diversification? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, share this video, and hit your thumbs on the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.